Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zack, and today I am driving a 2010 Ford Focus SE. Up front is a 2.0 liter inline-4, and down below is a 4-speed automatic transmission. Now, I am super excited to be driving this Ford Focus for two reasons. First of all, I haven't featured this generation of Focus here on the channel before, and I'm excited to dive into it with you here today. But the second reason is the fact that the Focus is no longer in production. And I think this is one of those cars that we just really need as a society, so I'm excited to get into that with you here today. But if you'd like to submit your own vehicle and have it reviewed here on the channel, you can head on over to my website, zackpradel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form. It takes under a minute to fill out, and I come out to you. And if you'd like to see all my videos weeks or sometimes months in advance, you can head on over to my Patreon for only $5 a month. But let's get back to that 2-liter Duratec inline-4 under the hood. Well, it makes about 140 horsepower, which is a whopping 3 horsepower more than the outgoing generation of Focus. The first generation Ford Focus offered a 2-liter as well as a 2.3. This simplified it just down to the 2-liter. This really is just a heavily refreshed first gen. This is the second generation of Focus, but they really took that first gen and just prettied it up for the second gen. It's not a bad thing, it just shares a lot of underpinnings. And I like the Duratec family a lot. They're pretty stout motors for what they are. They're nothing showboaty, they're not gonna earn you any street cred, but they're decent for what they tried to achieve. Now, like I said, paired to it is a 4-speed automatic transmission. Here around town, as I'm driving it, it's fine. It's not anything too crazy. However, I really would want that 5th or 6th gear when on the highway. That is where this kind of falls on its face, because you run out of gears before you're halfway through the on-ramp. And with the little 2-liter, as stout as it might be, it just can't really carry the tune up at 80 miles an hour. Last but not least, of course, the Focus is front-wheel drive. So how does it feel to drive the second generation Ford Focus? It's fine. It's really nothing too special. It does have a lot of economy car attributes, meaning somewhat rough suspension, little rattly here and there. It's not a premium experience by any means. But this wasn't meant to be a premium automobile, and so it makes sense. That engine is somewhat zippy though. It does want to go, but the overall car isn't an athlete. This is a car that could play a pickup game of soccer on a Monday night, but they're not going pro. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have 4 gauges. Off to the left is the tachometer, up in the center is fuel and coolant temperature, and off to the right is my speedometer. We do get a little digital readout down below as well for odometer and information. On the steering wheel, we don't have anything. Not a thing. We have the Ford logo and an airbag, that's it. Off to the left, we have a climate control vent, headlight switch, and gauge dimmer switch. And moving on to the door, we have lock and unlock, and our power windows down below. Moving into the center, we do get a little information screen up here. This is telling me currently my satellite radio with an artist who spells Zack incorrectly. But I like this, this is predating screens in cars. But down below, we have 2 climate control vents and our radio. So we have a CD player and tune and volume and things like that. But again, no giant screen here in the Ford Focus. And it's actually quite refreshing to see because it's not distracting me. I actually really like this. I think we're kind of going in reverse. But then down below, we have climate controls, fan speed off to the left, temperature off to the right, where to send it in the middle. We have AC, recirculating, and max AC buttons. Then we have some information buttons down below. We have literally info, but also setup, reset, traction control, and a light for the passenger airbag. We have 2 12-volt outlets as well as an aux input. Very nice to see that. And then the shifter in the center. The shifter is pretty plasticky, very Ford of the era. Most vehicles, even like the F-150, had a similar shifter to this in their vehicles, so it makes sense and it works well enough. Then we do have cup holders. We'll do a big friggin' bottle test, and unfortunately, yet semi-predictably, the Ford Focus fails the big friggin' bottle test. It is what it is. And then we have a handbrake and a center console. The seats are comfortable. I like that they almost have this somewhat late 90s look and pattern to them. I think it actually looks kind of decent, and they're not uncomfortable. You know, this has 116,000 miles on it. I'm still comfy in it. They're cloth. They're basic, but I think they've held up well over the last couple of years. However, speaking of seats, we do have back seats. So let's go do a backseat review. Before we get into the back of the Ford Focus, I don't know if I could zoom in far enough, but there's a first-gen Honda Odyssey parked in the parking lot. That is a gem beyond gems here in Chicago. Those do not exist anymore. Very, very rare. Anyway, talking about more normal cars, getting into the back of the Ford Focus SE, and 5'11", not a small guy, I have room in between my knees and the seat in front of me. This is actually relatively spacious for being an economy car. This is a cheap, affordable car, and yet I'm not being squashed back here. I don't feel like I've been sent to a prison cell just to ride in the back of my buddy's car. Headroom is also good. I'm pretty comfortable back here. Like, this is actually not a bad place to be. And again, with economy cars, I feel like they always try to sort of punish you for getting the smaller version. I will say, American economy cars tend to have better backseat space. GM was very good about this, not only with like the Chevy Aveo, but like Pontiac G6 that I used to own. That had an amazing backseat. So Ford followed suit with that. You know, us Americans, we like space, we like spreading out. And so you see that here in the Focus. Same pattern as the front seats found back here. We do not have a middle center console. I can pull this and fold it down, not to bury the lead. We'll talk about the trunk here in a second. We do have a cup holder down here. Overall, for an economy car, 2 thumbs up here for the Ford Focus. Let's hop into the very back. We'll take a quick look at the trunk and cargo space, and then we'll talk about the looks. So around the back of the Ford Focus, we do have a button here on the key fob to pop the trunk and pull it up. One thing to note, however, the owner did tell me that there's no like electronic lockout for this button. So you could be driving down the road. If you accidentally hit this, your trunk will pop while driving. There's no like cutout for that. Anyway, I don't know why I find it so funny that the OBD sensor is laid out like the baby Jesus. But there you go. So that is the trunk space of the Ford Focus. If you own an older vehicle, you will be familiar with all of these items found back here. But this is a very spacious trunk. Again, the overall packaging of the Ford Focus in this era is wonderful. You actually have rear seat space. You actually have trunk space. And so it's very, very usable, and that's why I'll talk about later on. This is the car that we really needed at that time, so keep that in mind, how spacious this car was for how little it is and how affordable it was. So there you go, trunk space of the Ford Focus SE. Second generation. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and I don't love the look of this car. However, I think it has aged pretty gracefully, meaning it's not like so ugly. I'm not looking at this and saying, oh, remember 2000s fashion and how bad it was? Look at how bad the cars were. No, I don't have to say that, because I think it looks fine. You know, it's relatively dignified. You can start to notice on the exterior that this does look like a warmed over, modified, kitted out first gen. They just kind of changed it a little bit, which again isn't bad. It's just an observation. But overall, I think it looks decent. It looks a lot better now that it has the alloy wheels on it. The original wheels were steel with hubcaps. I think these really sell the look a lot more. With all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving a second generation Ford Focus? Well, I have to say I like this experience. You know, this car has a little bit of fighting spirit. It's not a complete lug behind the wheel. I think it looks decent enough. I love the lack of screen. I like how basic it is. The 4-speed automatic is way more reliable than the third generation Focus that came after this. That had a Claymore as a transmission. This is going to be more reliable. The Duratec is pretty reliable. This is going to be a good car. And that's kind of my final thoughts. The owner, Alex, purchased this car last November, 2025, for $600. 600 bones, out the door. Now, not only is that a great steal, but he got a good car for it, and it's going to be pretty trusty for him over the next several years if he plans on keeping it that long. And the owner, Alex, wasn't looking for a Ford Focus. He was looking for a Honda CR-V, a car I'm also fond of. But this sort of fell into his lap, and he said I can't pass that deal up, and so he bought it. The reason I bring that up is because this generation of Ford Focus didn't have a sporty version, at least here in the United States. We didn't get any sporty version. There wasn't the ST, there wasn't the RS. I know in England they did get an RS of this generation. We didn't get that. And so this generation of Ford Focus is probably the least desirable. It wasn't sporty, had one engine, one transmission option unless you got manual, so one automatic. They stuck with the 4-speed. It was really a transitional period. It was only 2008 to 2011. That's not a very long run for a generation. Pairing that with the fact that it came out in 2008 when we had the financial crisis here in the United States. We needed cheap, affordable cars at that time, and we needed efficient cars because gas prices were so high. And so this was a great answer. It was a good car for its time. It was a car that people needed, and that's it. This is not the Ford Focus that anyone wanted. This isn't the car that anyone wanted, but it's the car that people needed. It was affordable, it was economical, and it was reliable enough. I know Ford has their own issues, and I'm sure that this won't have a clean track record by the time it meets the Crusher, but it has a good enough track record. It might not be an A student, but it's a B+. It's a solid B. It's an 85%, round up or down at your leisure. That's all this car needed to be, and it was the car that we needed at the time. Of course, we had Honda Civics and Toyota Corollas and all that, but something from America, we needed an economy car in '08, and this delivered. And that's why these sold pretty well, because not everyone could go spend $40,000 on a full-size sedan at the time. So this made a lot of sense. And luckily for Ford, it made a lot of dollars. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Alex for letting me borrow his Ford Focus for today's video and meeting me halfway for the review. I always appreciate when people do that. He's been absolutely wonderful to work with, and I really appreciate him sharing his Ford Focus with us here today. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.